So here in update 2.0.5, guys, we've got fusion rifles received a damage buff in PvE. We're going to dive into that buff and see how much damage has actually been buffed across the board. We're also going to do a direct comparison. I want to compare the exotic fusion rifle Merciless to the Ikelos Shotgun. We're also going to talk about 1000 Voices and if it also received a buff along with this increased fusion rifle damage buff in 2.0.5. Now first up, let's talk about what's happening with fusion rifles. This damage buff consists of a 40% increase in damage, which is pretty substantial. Most of the gameplay you're going to see today is from Merciless, but all fusion rifles got this buff in PvE. As you can see here from this footage, this is pre 2.0.5. I'm hitting approximately 115 per bolt. Now this was actually me without the Merciless Catalyst. I recently got the Merciless Catalyst. Now after 2.0.5 with the Catalyst as well, I'm hitting 164 per bolt. Now that actually equates to about 42 to 43% increase in damage, but understand that first damage value had some damage fall off involved. But yeah, we tested this out on both the Servitor as well as Greg. I had some previous footage and it's a 40% buff across the board for all fusions. Now back to Greg. This is where we do a lot of our damage testing and where we do a lot of comparisons. Let's talk about Merciless though and what it's doing here to Greg. It's hitting 634 per bolt. And at 7 bolts, that's approximately 4,438 damage per shot. Now, Ikelos without Trench Barrel hits 191 per pellet. With Trench Barrel, though, it jumps up an extra 50% in damage and hits 287 per pellet. So for a total of 12 pellets, your Ikelos Shotgun is hitting 3,444 with Trench Barrel. Now that may sound like, okay, Merciless is already beating it. Not exactly, because what we're not taking into account is those big yellow numbers. That is the precision damage that Ikelos is hitting. Something like Greg, that's an extra 2,000 to 4,000 damage per shot. So it looks like Ikelos is still king. Not exactly either, which takes us to our conclusion. Despite how good Ikelos is, and yes, it is the king when it comes to just doing very fast amount of DPS in a short span of time, and if you're rocking things out like shotgun reserves and those extra reserve perks, you can really start taking advantage of what Ikelos can bring to the table because it already holds a number of shots, which is one of the biggest disadvantages with Merciless. Merciless is in dire need of having more ammo reserves. But where Merciless has a leg up, especially for me in some Gambit situations, is that you're not necessarily right there on top of the boss, right? You can sit back, you can have some distance, especially with this Catalyst. You can put some distance between you and that boss and still take advantage of some very good DPS. When I use an Ikelos, especially in something like Gambit, I'm constantly having the time when the boss is going to slam. Timing that stomp mechanic, make sure I'm melee at the same time. It works hand in hand with what Trench Barrel is on Ikelos, because you're just reprocking it again. But there's a lot of times I end up dying. So I think Merciless is a good option. And if you're looking for like casual DPS, is that even a thing? Who casually just wants to do damage? But for real though, if you're looking to just casually do some damage, Merciless is it. No stress. Sit behind your rally barricade or sit in your rift. Keep some distance between you and your enemy. You're good. And on another note, if Ikelos didn't exist in this game, Merciless would be king, especially in this sandbox. Ikelos right now is just too damn good. Now before we conclude this video, let's talk about 1000 Voices. Does this weapon receive a buff alongside the rest of our fusion rifles? If you look at its description, it doesn't say linear fusion. It very much says fusion rifle. So we all assumed that 1000 Voices would receive that 40% damage buff in PvE as well, and it's already pretty good. But with that 40% buff to it, oh my god. Turns out, no it does not. Like I really am surprised it doesn't. No, this is the damage that it's hitting pre 2.0.5, and this is after. So no, Bungie did not buff the damage here, or did not apply it to 1000 Voices. Now, whether or not this is bugged, maybe they did intend for 1000 Voices to also receive this, but considering it is placed in our power slot, maybe they missed it? I don't know. I was very much looking forward to the damage it could possibly put out. Well, those are your fusion rifle details for 2.0.5, guys. Let me know in the comments below what you think about them. Are you using them? I'm not gonna lie, I'm using fusion rifles more in PvP than anything else, and they didn't even get a buff. But I guess using them in PvE has been making me use them more in PvP, and man, are they nasty. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.